Welcome to another episode of College Nook Podcast. I'm Natalie Keller. Today I'm speaking with my dear friend and colleague, Jessica Huerta. Since we have only a few weeks left in this year, we thought it would be fun to reflect on all the events that happened in 2020. So we discussed the pandemic, the switch to remote teaching and learning. We also share some of the new books and podcasts we discovered this year. I hope you will enjoy this conversation. Please subscribe to College Nook Podcast on your preferred platform. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many other platforms. Welcome to another episode of College Nook Podcast. And I'm here today with my friend and colleague, Jessica Huerta. How are you, Jessica?
I'm doing good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's been kind of a long year, and if we were still on campus, I feel like we would have our lunch meetings once in a while.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, I honestly can't remember the last time we actually saw each other. I know we tried to. I know we had lunch once, and I think that was at the beginning of us being sent home. Um, but yeah, honestly, this year has been such a blur. Like time has just not functioned the same way for me.
Yeah, I agree. How would you say remote working is working for you?
Yeah, so I mean, there's different levels to that answer. I think I've loved it just because um, I love being at home. Like I love not having to commute. Um, except I do miss riding my bike because I used to commute riding my bike to
Mm-hmm.
school. But I do like being at home, and I like um, I like being able to wake up like 10 minutes before I'm supposed to sign on,
Yeah.
and not really have to put that much effort into getting ready and everything like that. So I think my quality of life has increased in that aspect. I do miss my friends at work and that kind of social interaction though. But
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
do I have appreciated the time that I've gotten at home for sure.
totally. I
Yeah.
just feel like with us going through this year, I was reflecting on benefits of remote working just because we've been focused on the negative sides of it so
Hmm.
much with our students, struggling with online learning and remote learning. And I, same with like you mentioned, I appreciate having 10 hours back to my weekly schedule that I don't have to
Right.
commute anywhere. Um, the problem though, I feel like I'm not using that time very effectively.
Hmm. How so?
So I don't know, like I wish I could still get up earlier and do something
Okay.
productive. I don't know.
Like the same time you would wake up before.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Like maybe go for a walk or go to the gym. I know it's still difficult with pandemic going on, going to the gym, but
Hmm.
have you been going to the gym these days?
Yeah, so my gym it's pretty small. It's kind of like a boutique kind of gym. So it's like it's owned by this one guy. So it's not like a franchise or anything. So it's pretty small. So it hasn't been that much of a struggle because the class that I go to at 5 in the morning really only has like 4 people in it. So it's not really like much of a you already social distance anyway. Um, so I still haven't been able to do that, which is nice. And then the day like when we were shut down completely, we did the live streaming. So like our coach would do the live stream sessions in the morning. And then I do personal training with him once a week. So I've still been
Hmm.
able to do that with him.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah. So that's been a huge help for me though, because working out for me is something that's always been kind of meditative and kind of helps me
Hmm.
keep level headed.
Yeah,
So starting my day that way always is good because then I feel like I'm prepared for what the day is going to bring.
totally.
So I really enjoy that for sure. So
Yeah.
that's been a huge plus for me in that I've
Hmm.
been able to kind of um, continue doing that and kind of
Hmm.
perfecting my skills in because I'm doing mixed martial arts, so
Hmm. Nice.
that's doing that. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
kind
yeah.
of working on that.
That's fun. I feel
Yeah.
like for spring and summer semesters, it was easier for me to do something active because I would just get up early, 5:30 or 6 and go for my morning walk, listen to some podcasts and kind of set that tone and mood for the day. But with winter, first it's dark. I'm like, "Oh, I hate winter time for that reason."
Yeah.
And then it's getting colder. So now I switched to my lunch walks. Luckily, it's Denver, Colorado, December 9th, and the weather is so nice still.
Yeah. It's like the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah, I
know,
agree.
I've been living here for 4 or 5 years now. I feel like I still have to experience the real Colorado winter because we haven't really had anything too severely cold.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we've gotten some heavy like snowfalls and snowstorms, but I wouldn't say anything like that I would have expected from having
Mm,
moved to a colder place too.
too extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, too extreme. Maybe because we're not in the mountains either, like in the
Yeah.
mountains where that stuff happens. But yeah, I would agree. I think with it getting darker, I honestly have felt kind of more burnt out at work this fall semester, and I don't know so much. I don't. I'm trying to decide if it's because so like the weather and the change of time and it's getting darker, or if this fall semester in general has just been that much harder. Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of hard to differentiate there. Like I feel like I've done a lot more students that have struggled this fall semester.
Hmm. Well, I think burnout is real, and we have this new term, Zoom fatigue.
Yeah,
It's getting to us,
yeah,
back to
that's
back
true.
appointments with students, even though we love what we do, still is tiring a little bit.
It is. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, even though when we were in person, I was still having the same kind of conversations every day. It just feels different via Zoom. Yeah, or phone, because, some students don't want to do Zoom. But
But
that's true. Yeah, the Zoom fatigue is a real thing.
yeah, and if you think about it, you're in your office, you're going to greet the students, you're going to walk them out, you can
Hmm.
go and walk around the campus. Here it's like, accept new student, and it's like, oh my gosh, will this end? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have like staff meetings and other meetings, and you're just like, okay,
Which,
enough.
some people pointed out to me that some of the staff meetings were more effective because while, let's say, you are sharing a thought or idea regarding something, I can already start putting my thoughts in comments. While in real meetings, I have to wait and wait and wait. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of somebody said, oh, that's kind of cool that we have that in Zoom meetings. But to me, I think it's easier for me to just check out and not pay attention. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of our students are saying the same thing about classes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know during I know during our staff meetings, I definitely tend to check out and like do work or just do something else, right? And it's hard to pick up on social cues of like when you can talk
Hmm.
because you think someone's done and then someone else gets in there and you're just like, oh no. So I mean, I think to anything, there's definitely some pros and cons um, to the Zoom life to working from home. I think I think it's interesting kind of moving forward, thinking about what our roles are going to look like, or our roles, what they're going to look like, and how the university is going to grow with this change. Like, are they going to be more flexible with like our the way that we do our job? Can we maybe sometimes work from home? Can we not?
Yeah.
Have enough kind of flex schedule because it is true. I mean, I think the quality of life, and maybe not for everyone. I mean, I've heard a couple coworkers that have kids where this hasn't been the most ideal situation for them.
Yeah.
Um, and then the flip side, coworkers that haven't spent enough time with their kids, so it is the ideal situation. And
Hmm.
people who live alone versus who haven't enjoyed it, and people who live alone who have. So again, pros and cons. But I think kind of moving forward, I think it would be beneficial, I would say, to our leadership um, to be more flexible in how we conduct our work because what works for one person may not work for someone else, right?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel like academic advising is doable remotely and you can effectively support the students?
100%. I
Yeah,
don't think I've been able to, I don't think there's nothing that I can't do at home that I wouldn't be able to do in my office. Like,
agreed.
yeah,
I
like,
feel I felt the same way. For some reason, when we just switched to remote work, I was a little nervous that students will kind of fall off the radar. I kind of experienced the opposite. They are more like proactive, and they want
yeah.
to meet and kind of check in. I don't know.
I think also, at least for me, like the feedback that I've gotten from my students has been they don't have to pay for parking to come see me. So or they don't have to commute to come see me. Like they can literally just log in. Which they had that option before, right? Zoom was always an option, but we never really like advertised it as
Yeah,
much. So
totally. Yeah.
um,
How about teaching and learning remotely? What are you hearing from your students? What's the feedback?
Um, so it hasn't been great.
Mm,
And I think that's mostly been because they feel like their instructors this semester have mostly just given them more busy work than they would have if they had been in person. Um, I've also heard, which I thought was interesting, like I've had students who have taken like fully online versus Zoom, the same class, like one person is the online and their friend is the Zoom, and there's more busy work in the Zoom than the online. So so they would be like, God, that's just not fair. Like they're just giving us just stuff that's not even like I feel like I'm teaching myself basically in the Zoom one, and so I think it's been hard, and I understand with the instructors too. Like a lot of them are not used to the technology aspect of it, and it can't be easy teaching certain courses online either. So yeah, I have the most overwhelming reaction hasn't been positive, but I wouldn't say so much because of the fact that it's remote. It's how it's being taught, like the content and the quality isn't the same, basically.
hmm.
Like if
Yeah.
the quality could still match, I don't think it'd be an issue being remote for them.
And, I think we still have a room for growth in that, hey, we're just doing this kind of for the second semester in a row. I think it's still possible to improve if folks want to improve. And I agree. I think even my brain wouldn't be able to quickly switch to a totally new type of learning. If I was used to teaching on the whiteboard for the last 15 years, like,
Hmm.
here, Natalie, here's Zoom. And I will tell you this, I'm not sure, Jess, if I mentioned that I was teaching a university class, college success.
For this semester,
Yeah.
okay.
So I had, 27 students, all CS majors, or pretty much all of them were. And it was rough. Like, I was noticing how my strength is to be in person and engage and walk around and, use my kind of even like body language when I communicate. And here I am with a bunch of Zoom black boxes with names. Engagement was a struggle, I will be honest with you. And so, if I want feedback, if I want to have a live discussion on the topic, it was tough. And just like I go to my staff meetings and I check out sometimes, the students do the same.
Mhm.
So
I'm
that was
interested.
part of the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear from you your opinion on. Did you get any feedback from students taking that course saying that they didn't really see the point of that course?
Not that part. They really appreciated the information and how it was kind of a continued new student orientation for them, that they were able to at least get a feel for resources and what they should do when and how, and put the office, and then have a connection in that office. Like, we invited career services office
Mhm.
and this and that. So that was nice. The piece that was tough for them, and time again they would submit that feedback throughout the class, is that connection with peers was a
Mm.
problem, because they go to class, they zoom in, zoom out, and then they do homework, and that's it. So I think for the future reference, we need to be more intentional about that part. But then also, the students noted that they were tired of Zoom meetings and Zoom events. They were required to go to at least 4 workshops or events that are
Okay.
virtual. It's tiring and not
Yeah.
as productive. So there is that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I know some feedback. So, three of our CLAS advisors taught the Unite class this fall semester. Two of them, I think, had a really good response to them. One of them, I think she struggled a lot too. Like, I don't think the group of students that she had was, I think it was really challenging. Same with engagement, just really like pulling at strings there. Whereas in person, and she's taught that before, it wasn't really an issue at all. And then I've had a couple like students just say like, well, what's the point of this course? And so I'm explaining the benefits of taking a course like that, um, because you do see the benefits of a course like that when you're coming straight out of high school and you don't know anything about college. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
honestly, I had these little checkpoints throughout the semester, and I had one student consistently say, I know all of this. I know all of this. And when I asked how come, he said, my high school was just really good. We did all of this in high school.
mm,
But that was one human being out of 27. So I think
right,
still it was worth totally having that class.
yeah, yeah. I think it's also beneficial having advisors teach that class, just because it's also a connection, a way for us to connect with our own students, like our own cohort of students. Um, although personally, like I was approached to like teach it this fall semester, but I just didn't. I didn't want to. I've taught a class like that before. I've had that experience. I think I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. I still need to fill out the survey if I want to teach next year, and I'm kind of waiting until the very last day to submit that because I know we should run it, but I
Yeah,
would be the only person teaching it, so I just need to come to terms with that, and hopefully maybe we'll be on campus. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I'm hoping moving forward, our the flexibility is there. Like even if we were back in person, like even the campus is back in person and there's students on campus, for us to still have that flexibility of like, hey, this week I really want to go, I don't know, visit my mom, but I don't want to take off work and I can work remotely. Like having that flexibility of being
Yeah.
able to do that.
I wish I could just go to Ukraine and
I
visit my
know.
parents while I work.
Yeah. Those would be crazy hours for you though.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Some of our faculty had to go back home, the
Mm.
other side of the planet, and they struggle a lot because of the time difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, people 8 hour or 8 or 9 hour difference, not fun when it's 2 a.m. in the morning and you have to teach a class.
Yeah. It'd be crazy for sure. But
Yeah,
but still having that flexibility would be kind of nice.
totally.
Or even if you wanted to like take a vacation, as in like go somewhere but still work, and then just not take the full vacation days. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
Just
Do you
my,
think we will ever go back to fully back to normal?
I don't think no. So my short answer for that would be no. I think normal for what it was says before is not going to be what the new normal is going to be.
Hmm.
Um, I think Well, I think now that vaccines are going to come out, a lot of people are going to feel a lot more comfortable. But I think it's still going to take some time to gather in like big groups of people. It's still going to take some time to be comfortable, just being in close quarters. Um, I think even moving forward, like even for me personally, there's little things that like I used to do. It's so weird to think about before and after, but that like I used to do before COVID hit, where like I didn't even think of like when I would put gas in my car. I didn't even think
Yeah.
about like wiping my hands, right? And now I'm just like, why? That was so obvious to do before. Like, why wouldn't I do that? So little things like that um, are definitely going to be like changing for me. So
Yeah.
it's just going to be a new, different type of normal. Like
Mhm.
I don't know how like movie theaters are going to do, concert venues. Like there's a lot of things that I think it's going to take a while to recover and to feel established, I guess, again.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I guess we'll see how it goes. I'm kind of hoping to be able to go back home next year. and visit my parents for a little bit. So fingers crossed,
Yeah.
nobody's on lockdown.
Yeah, seriously. Hopefully, we've seen the well. Hopefully, we've seen the worst of it. But um, yeah, just kind of going back to what you were saying about, there's obviously there was a lot of negatives happening this year, and it felt like a year of just constant bad news. Um, but I do think that, at least personally, there's been some light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I know for me, this year was a huge year because of what happened. Interest rates for student loans were frozen. Therefore, I was actually able to pay off my student loans completely,
Yay.
which is great. Yeah, it's a huge weight off my chest. Um, so little things like that, where we were able to get a dog because we were both home. So that's also like a huge plus. And I can't imagine a life without a pet.
Yeah,
So just
that's
like little
awesome.
things like that made this year
Hmm.
bearable.
Yeah. That is a big milestone with student loans. It's funny that you mentioned that because I'm planning a series of episodes for January around financial literacy and planning.
That's awesome.
So I'm very excited. People who are listening right now in December, stay tuned. I'm gonna have a student debt-free journey, kind of sharing experience. I'm gonna have hopefully folks who are just passionate about financial literacy and how they're empowering others, educating others. So I'm personally also very anti-debt, I found.
Yep.
Oh man, so
Yeah.
working on that as well, for me and Kyle, my
Mhm.
husband. And this year, we made a big decision to refinance our home mortgage
Okay.
because of the crazy low rates
Yeah.
and the housing market in Denver, Colorado. You know this, but I'm just
Yeah.
mentioning that it's going up. So, in 3 years, the increase is so huge, the rates are so low. So it would be crazy not to refinance. And in fact, by just doing this little thing, we are saving as much. To me, it's a lot. It's $500 a month that
Yeah.
is going back to our pockets each month
Yeah.
that I can then put towards, student debt or whatever else.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that's huge.
Yeah. That's interesting that you mentioned that. That I've also thought a lot about finances just this year in general. Um, One, because I never really pictured what that day would look like of actually paying off my student loans, because it just felt like I was chained. Like it just felt like something was holding me back from actually living, which sounds crazy because I have been able to do a lot of things, but still, like I just didn't feel like I was free in that aspect. Um, and yeah, I'm with you. I both Pablo, my husband, and I, we come to terms that we don't like debt. And so when we're talking about buying a house, and just kind of looking around Denver and how it seems impossible to even think about buying a house here. Like and getting educated in how that whole thing works is getting a loan from a bank and then doing the mortgages, and it depends on how much you're able to put down, whereas that's going to determine so many things. So just getting informed, because I feel like that's something that one, I never cared to learn before, and two, it was never really encouraged for me to learn that before. And in taking like our dogs for a walk around our neighborhood, there's this like nonprofit organization that teaches financial literacy to students in K through 12. And that's like the whole point of that organization, which I thought was awesome. Like it's
Wow.
it's like it's a bank, basically it's a bank, but just for teaching like financial literacy to
Hmm.
teenagers, or into little kids. Like they start really young. They have, because I looked into it just to see if they had any job openings, just to look at it. But so it's really interesting, and I feel like that's something that should be taught at a younger age than when you're like thrust into adulthood after college or around college or whatever. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, just thinking
100%.
about like in the future, like maybe upgrading our car, since our car's pretty old. Like I don't want to have a car payment, so we have to save up for that. So just trying to balance everything out can also be like just super daunting too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're very right because banks will tell you, hey, zero down, get a house, or minimum 3% down, get a house. And, just learning how you pay that interest first and then how much interest you pay over the life of that loan. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah. I um I got curious actually how much interest I ended up paying versus just like what my actual student loan was. And so when I graduated, I think I was at like 58 something. And then I did the math and everything, and I ended up paying over the lifetime of all my loans. I ended up paying, I think it was close to like $80,000. So it was almost $30,000 of just interest. And I was
Yeah.
like, I could have bought a house. Like I could have done so much with that money. Like it just,
Yes.
yeah. Student loans is something that I have a big grievance with the way that we do education in this country, higher education in this country. But
Hmm.
yeah, I could talk about that for hours.
I know, I know. And it's interesting. Like, I take these financial decisions so seriously. And like you mentioned, the financial literacy is not encouraged, it's not really accessible.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, sign this paper, here's the loan, goodbye. And so, I'm just really mind blown how people are getting into that without understanding what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of the culture of how it's always been in the United States, which is, coming from obviously us two coming from two different countries. Like that's not really something that, I mean, at least, yeah, that's not really something that is as common, right?
It's not common in Ukraine, or
Right.
very people try to stay away from loans as much as possible.
Exactly. Yeah. Same. So coming into this kind of culture where this is basically how American society works is everything is off debt, everything's off credit. Like you never really own what you own because you're always paying it off.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of weird to have that, to live in a society that's how it is. Cause like I know I've like walked through, like I said, I've walked through our neighborhood and I see like a couple our age and I know how much those houses are worth. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But it's also a
Mm,
reminder that, yeah, there's probably a lot of debt there.
yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I want to be honest. I am grateful for the ability to take out a little bit of loans because I
Yeah.
was able to supplement my graduate school stipend and kind
Hmm.
of pay for rent and be careful, not like max out on those or anything
Yeah.
like that. So I think having that education and being strategic about how much you take, when you pay, how you pay off
Exactly.
is the important part of it because it could be a very helpful tool if managed correctly.
Yeah, where I didn't. I took out the max amount to help pay for rent, to help pay for,
Yeah.
stuff. Um, where if I knew then what I know now, I could have been just fine taking out just exactly what I needed, budgeting everything, even with rent and stuff, and it still would have been better than where I ended up. I mean, and again, I'm so grateful that I was able to get that education,
Yeah.
that has provided me with a job that I'm able to pay, that I was able to pay back my loans and stuff like that. But that shouldn't be a struggle that students have to go through at all. Like
Right.
I think the U.S. is one of the very few countries that don't have public education be free, and
Mm-hmm.
that just seems incredibly backwards to me.
Mm-hmm. And I caught myself yesterday on this thought as we were making decisions about refinancing our mortgage and whether we should do it or not and which scenario we should pick. I'm like, I wish I could pick up a phone and just call a family member or a friend who can be like, yeah, yeah, this makes sense. And makes me just realize that we're first in this country trying to figure out, for Kyle, he's like a first gen going through college and
Mhm.
then buying these houses and living the American dream, I guess. And for me, for sure, everything's so new. So it could be really overwhelming and just difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I always try to tell people: don't let that overwhelm you. If you
Same.
don't feel 100% confident that you're making the right decision, maybe walk away, do more research, and kind of go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with taking more time. Like I know salesmen, they try like realtors, all that. They're like, oh, you're gonna lose it if you don't do it now. Like they try to do that pressure. Um, but yeah, if it doesn't feel right, if you need more information, definitely take that time. Like do your due diligence and research because it's those fine prints that always get you. So
Totally. And
yeah.
speaking of research and information, are you listening to any podcasts that are like money related?
So not necessarily money related.
Mm.
I kind of needed something to distract me from my day. So the podcast usually that I listen to is Armchair Expert.
Uh-huh.
So I've been and they have a lot of like they have actors and celebrities on there, but they also have like oh my god, I forgot uh, the guy that Kyle really likes,
Sam Harris.
Sam Harris. So they've
Making
had him.
sense.
Yeah, so they've had Sam Harris there several times actually.
Really?
Because Dak Shepard, who's one of the hosts, he's a huge fan of Sam Harris, so they've had him on there a couple times. And then I was just listening to some like scary horror podcast show.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, not necessarily, um, yeah, not necessarily.
Finance related. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Pablo listened to one earlier this year, and I forget the name. I'll have to circle back and give it to you. But he was telling me about this one specifically talking about purchasing like a house or a condo and how that saying where people are like, well, you're just throwing your money away in rent isn't always necessarily true because unless you can put a certain percentage down of your salary, then it doesn't make any sense to do that. Um, but I'll have to circle back to you on that one because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't remember the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I try to, listen to podcasts that are both entertaining and also educational. So it depends on my mood. Okay, today I feel like learning something new. I'll hit Money Lab. Or like the other time, I also start listening to Armchair Expert, a couple of his episodes, and obviously my favorite, Making Sense with Sam Harris.
Yeah.
Um, a new one that I recently started listening to in August, Conversations with Coleman Hughes.
Okay.
He's a really bright, young, made the 30 under 30 Forbes list. I
Oh wow.
really, really enjoy his kind of brain, if it makes sense, like how he thinks and how he goes through different conversations and topics. It's really cool. So I would recommend Coleman for
Hmm.
sure.
I
But but yeah.
there's this. I don't know if I've gotten a chance to uh, just off of Armchair Expert. He interviewed this person called Chris Voss. Um,
Hmm.
and he did a master class on like negotiating, like 7 tips for negotiating. Um, so he used to be like a former FBI negotiator, but he like did a master class on these like negotiating tips and how they're really applicable like across the board,
Okay.
which was really interesting because I've kind of applied it to like some of my sessions with my students when like they get really angry and like to try and kind of like bring it back down. I've started practicing implementing some of this techniques, and it's actually pretty cool. So if you get
Hmm.
to listen to that one, I'd highly recommend listening to
Hmm.
Chris Voss's masterclass on that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good recommendation. I always look for interesting conversations. Um, do you have any other podcasts or shows that you like to listen to?
Um. So I did listen to again. I'm really bad with names, so I might have to get back to you on this one. But when we were coming back from a weekend trip in the mountains, we listened to this one about um, institutional racism and how it's been around for
Hmm.
a while. I forget what the name was called, 19 something. Um,
Hmm.
but that was really interesting. So yeah, every now and then, I usually try and like with podcasts and books, I usually try to use those more as escapes. So I don't tend to do a lot of serious
Hmm.
subjects. I mean,
Gotcha.
they are serious, but
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah.
fictional in that aspect. But I mean, to be honest, ever since Kyle introduced me to some of his books,
Mm-hmm.
every like I'll start incorporating certain things, like certain books and podcasts in there. Um, so yeah, so
Yeah.
that's been. And I'm just so bad with names. I
Oh,
should have
it's
come more
okay.
prepared regarding that,
It's totally
for sure.
cool.
But yeah,
Yeah, I feel like me personally, I was listening to Armchair Expert earlier in the summer because I already started, exploring the idea of starting my podcast. And
oh
I was like,
yeah,
okay, I know he's top rated. I need to start listening to folks to see how they, lead the conversations and guide the discussion.
yeah.
So that's how I got introduced to his stuff. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, he has some great episodes. There's another one that he did with Ezra Klein, who was one of the founders for Vox, like Vox News and stuff. Um, and so they talked about the debate between Ezra and Sam Harris because they had,
Hmm.
they had that really famous one. So
Oh,
they talked
yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was a really cool one to listen to, which prompted me to like kind of do more research
Yeah.
on Ezra Klein and kind of like his stuff. So it's
Totally.
been pretty cool.
I know that you also like reading books. Do you feel like this year you had more time and energy to do that, or kind of not so much?
Yeah, that's a fun question. Yes and no. So I used to use a I probably gonna regret saying this, but I used to use a lot of work time to read
Hmm.
at like on campus because sometimes we have no shows or I don't know stuff like that.
Downtime. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I used to have a lot of downtime, so I felt like I would be able to read more when I was there. Um, Whereas at home, I've still been able to read more. Like I've still been able to read a lot, but I don't think I'm gonna hit my goal of how many books I was supposed to read this semester that I put for myself. Not the semester, this year. Ugh, I hate thinking about the year semesters. Sorry. That's just how my brain works. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm about to finish this one book it's fiction, but it's still pretty intense. Talks it kind of deals with the subject of death. Um, but I've kind of read a variety of books this year, so it's been really good in that aspect. But so I haven't been able to read as much as I would have liked because also like when I'm at home, that's like my time to catch up with like Pablo and stuff like that, and us having conversations. So that takes away from my reading time. Um, but I've been able to find some time for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say your top book for this year is from the ones
Oh
that you read?
my gosh.
I'm
um,
asking because I like, recommendations for me too. That's why I like
yeah.
asking people too.
I read a virus. So I kind of covered a lot of genres
Hmm.
this year. Um, well, this book that I'm reading right now is called "They Both Die at the End." So not really spoiling how it ends, but just the concept of it was really really good. I've really enjoyed, but I've also had been kind of at war with. Um, is kind of dealing with the concept of family trauma and how it's passed down through generations.
Hmm.
Um, so that one was, I would say it is my favorite and also my least favorite at the same time because I have a
Hmm.
lot of inner battles and conversations with myself regarding that.
Hmm.
Because I think it
Do
makes
you
you confront a
remember?
lot of things.
Do you remember who the author is and the name of the book?
It's called It Didn't Start With You, How Inherited Family Trauma Shapes Who We Are and How to End the Cycle. And it's by Mark Wolin.
Hmm. Interesting. Heavy subject, but I'm curious because when you just kind of read the title, it made me think of a couple of things, sort of.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It can be very uncomfortable to read, which is why I had a lot of issues with it too. But
Hmm.
yeah, I would. It's a one that I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, I might look into that. But as you said, sometimes heavy reads, you just have to make a pause and kind of
Definitely. Yeah.
resume
I'm
later.
I'm close to finishing it. I think about like maybe 2 chapters left, but I took a huge break because it was just yeah, I was getting very
Totally.
upset.
No, no, that's totally understandable. I think for me, I read two books that made me feel similarly in that it was heavy for me to digest. One was on cancer.
Mm.
It was something of all maladies, not king, but something. It was by researcher, and it was about cancer and how it's, historical sort of evidence of it and why it occurs and how and all of that stuff. It was really heavy. And then the second one was on depression,
Mm.
Noonday Demon by Andrew Solomon.
Okay.
Now that one was extremely educational. Had to put it down several times, take like weeks of breaks to just, and
Yeah.
then continue.
Take a breather.
Yeah.
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 That makes sense. Yeah.
But I think, to be honest with you, a person like me who doesn't have really a lot of exposure to mental health issues in my family, and it wasn't something that was talked about or discussed, or people don't know much about it in Ukraine. And then going through my higher education program and learning a little bit about mental health, this book really, really solidified, I guess, a lot of my knowledge on depression,
Hmm.
which was really cool.
Yeah. That is interesting. Yeah. Mental health is definitely an interesting subject that I feel needs to be talked about way more than it is talked about for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one other book that I would also recommend is called Why We're Polarized by
Mm,
Ezra Klein. Um, and it's really good read. I would highly, highly recommend that one too. It's hard for me to choose a
interesting.
favorite book, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, you got your top three, so that
Yeah,
works. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so
Well, your little Zoom background picture is really cute, which
thank you.
reminds me of the holiday season we're going into. I wanted to ask, you know, with us kind of ending this year, what would you say are some of the biggest lessons learned for you personally and just overall, the events that are happening in the world and our society? I know it's a big question and I didn't really think about asking it, but I think it's the one that I want to reflect on myself. So I thought maybe we can do it together.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this year, a lot happened this year other than just COVID.
Yeah.
There's a lot of political stuff going on. There's a lot of inequalities out there. So I feel like above everything else, one, I think this year was a big wake up call for me to be more aware, more involved in what I believe in. Like I feel like this year for me was more of a I can no longer be a silent ally, you know, in the things that I believe in. But above all else, honestly, uh, you just I maybe it was just me, but and I tried to stay away from the news, but there's just so much cruelty that I saw this year that I feel like
Mm,
the one thing that I would love to see more, and I saw a lot of it too, a lot of good things too, but the one thing I would love to see more is just kind of respecting each other as human beings, um, because we're all human beings and that doesn't
mhm.
change. And so I think being kinder to one another, kinder to ourselves for sure,
Yeah.
but I think being kinder to one another and just yeah, just respecting the fact that we're human beings, um, regardless of, you know, sex, gender, race, opinions, religion, anything like that. Like you don't have to
Right.
be the same to be able to appreciate someone. And so I think this year for me, above anything else, kind of really brought that to the forefront.
Mhm.
Um, so moving forward for me, I think my personal goal in that is to work on that and to be more conscious of my actions towards others,
Yeah.
and just kind of be more aware of that.
Mhm.
It is a heavy question, but it's one that I actually have been thinking about. So I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
so
I definitely agree with you, but I feel like not but that we fall into this circle every 4 years with big elections, and
mhm.
being a very active politically active person in Ukraine, I think this was really evident to me. And then moving here, people are less politically engaged, but then recently I
Hmm.
felt like there was an increase. And people forget that you can still communicate politely and not call each other names.
Exactly.
And I'm like, why is this such a new concept for you all?
Yeah.
Which is kind of disappointing. And I
Yeah.
understand that it's like tribalism. Like, it's 21st century, man. Wake
Hmm.
up, be more, I don't know, instead of like
Polarized.
polarizing, maybe try to understand that their perspective, and maybe they'll
Hmm.
be more open to understanding yours. And that's
Yeah.
why I think the book that I was reading on how to have impossible conversations really is helpful, because you don't start with block and walls. You start
Yeah.
with help me understand, but you have to
Exactly.
feel that way. You can't just fake it, obviously.
Yeah.
And being just a dual party country doesn't help. It's either
No.
black or white.
Yeah. Well, and also just, I mean, and this is going maybe a little bit too much into it, but just the way like our electoral college is set up, the way our voting system is set up is very different than a lot of other countries where it's not set up this way. So that also doesn't help, but just along with with, like you said, the two party system. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that that's exactly right. Like I've had family members that don't necessarily believe the way that I do, and
Mhm.
yeah, trying to have those constructive conversations instead of trying to tell them like, no, I'm right because I'm right because I'm this, because I this because this is what I believe, and it's just like, well, yeah, let's kind of compromise in that aspect. Like, let's meet halfway at least, or try to meet halfway. Like, I understand your perspective, but maybe try to understand my perspective, and like that kind of shift.
Mhm.
And I just feel like you're right that every 4 years we do kind of feel that here. I just feel like this year was amplified to the max.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that had to do with COVID as well, and people just being
Yeah.
at home and just everything else that was going on. Um, so hopefully we can learn. Um,
Yeah.
I still hold out hope for our species that we can be
Here's
more,
hoping.
yeah, yeah, that we can be more kind to each other for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Oh, sorry.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, for me, this year was one that made me think that I want to be more engaged with my community. Not so much politically, but kind of
Sure.
pick, okay, think about, Natalie, what do you care about? Because obviously you care about things, but need to do something about it, add your little piece to that. So I've been thinking a lot about it. I haven't made any steps to do anything just yet. I think mainly because of COVID, and maybe I'm still deciding what I want to do. But I think for me personally, a big accomplishment was the fact that I started this podcast. And it is for two reasons, main reasons, right? One, I will admit, for selfish reasons, just because I wanted to connect with people, with friends, with colleagues, with students, make new connections. And
Mhm.
so this has been a fun project that I think is fulfilling me in a new way that I didn't even expect. And then secondly, I want to bring value to the listener. So I know that my audience is not big right now, but I think for that audience, I'm hoping that each conversation will be valuable in some respect.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that was like a big one for me this year. And then politically speaking, I try to stay away from that just because of how ugly it got.
Mhm.
I was like, I will be honest with you, I didn't want to be part of any of the tribes.
Yeah. Makes
And
sense. I mean, it
and
got
that's
ugly.
why, like, no, I don't want to sign up for that or that, because it's ugly both ways. And that's why conversations with Coleman, where he talks like, hey, there is so much gray area, can we please talk about it? nobody wants to talk about it. It doesn't sell. Gray area doesn't, just black and white does. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
So I think for my mental health, I made that decision to kind of try and stay away from political topics as much as I could. I
Yeah.
couldn't all the time,
Sure.
um, but that's about it. And then I think this year showed that we are really flexible and adjust. We can adjust pretty quickly,
Hmm.
even though it does take a little bit of effort and struggle. But hey, we made it work, right? I think we
Yeah.
did a really good job. So kudos to you all,
Yeah.
students, faculty, advisors, honestly, because this was a rough one.
Yeah. It was a quick turnaround to get set up, and yeah, I agree. Kudos to everyone out there in education for sure,
Yeah.
and really everywhere else, but in our field because we work in there. So
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like 2020 was a challenging year, and that's why I'm excited for 21 because I'm hopeful it's going to be better for us all. We'll see.
yeah, I'm hoping 2020 served as a growth, as a stepping stone to be able to grow for 2021 in future years for sure. Um, yeah, we'll see how that goes for sure.
Do you have any hopes or goals for 2021 for yourself or us as a society?
As a society, that's a heavy one. um, I think for myself, honestly, I'm kind of at this crossroads of what I want to do with my life career.
Hmm.
Um, so I think a goal for me in 2021 is kind of taking that step to figure out how exactly to get what I want to get what out of this, out of my career, out of what I want to do with education specifically. So it scares me to think about like having to start over, because I have a really comfortable job, and when you really think about it, it has its challenges, but it's not a hard job, right? So
Hmm.
it's just like,
Hmm.
um, so that aspect of it scares me because I know that I could just keep doing what I'm doing until I retire, and I would have a pretty comfortable career. Um, but I just don't think that I'd be fulfilled. So
Yeah.
I kind of have to think about what my next step is, um, and how to make that next step happen. So that's kind of hopefully will be my goal in 2021 personally,
Yeah.
and then figuring out if we're going to stay in Denver or not, or what, or what the next steps are.
Lots,
So
lots of big, big
yeah,
items.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And
Um,
this really shows that no matter whether you are 18, 25, or 40 or whatever you are, there's always something that you have to change, make a big decision. Because I was just talking to a student who's in their second year in college and they're like, I need to change my major because I hate this. I'm like, it's totally okay.
yeah,
And
definitely.
and I and I can
I,
relate to what you're saying, Jess, too. Like for me personally, like
yeah,
maybe there is something that needs to change, maybe not.
yeah.
But yeah, lots of decisions.
Yeah, definitely lots of thoughts, lots of decisions. I also have to figure out whether I'm feeling that way just because of this how this whole year went out, or if I've been, or if not. I think I see other people and how much of a difference they're making in their job and how
Hmm.
they do feel fulfilled. And then I compare, and I think my mistake is that I compare with myself, and not saying that I don't be. I There's moments that I do feel fulfilled, with my job, obviously. Um, but there's moments where I'm like, this is so routine. I feel like I
Yeah.
could be doing more, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Well, let's schedule a mid-year check-in and we'll
yeah,
see
sounds good.
where you're at.
I will definitely yeah, we can do that. I'll definitely let you know.
Because honestly, though, this podcast is all about professional and personal development and growth. And whether you're in college or right after college or you're changing careers, we're all in this together, sort of. Like, I think first of all, it takes a village to figure out, a bunch of advisors, friends, and
Yeah.
family, and conversations, and introspection and reflection. But then also, it, I think to me, time and time again, I understand that no matter where you are with your path, there's always something that needs, you need to figure out, I guess.
Yeah, which kind of makes you question, like, are we ever satisfied? Or are we always searching? Is it a constant search? So that's more
Yeah.
existential question, but
We'll come back to that one for
yeah.
another episode of this
Yeah.
podcast. Um, But
Definitely.
really, thanks for this conversation. It was a lot of fun having you on here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I would love to come back.
Awesome. It's a deal.
Okay, sounds good.